Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Life and Sound podcast. I'm your host, Kid Capone. Today, I have an amazing guest with me, AJ Hall. He's a Tampa, Florida-based producer, drummer, sample maker, and live musician. He's worked with some of the biggest producers in the world, like IllMind, Cardiak, Static Selecta. He's gotten placements with Russ, Kid Cudi, Anthony Hamilton, just to name a few. I've been following him for a little while now, and he's an absolutely phenomenal musician and producer, and I can't wait to share a good conversation with him. AJ, how you doing today?
I'm good, man. I'm well. I'm really well. Yeah, man.
Excellent. Did you have a nice Father's Day with the family and all that?
Yeah, it was good, man. It was good. Threw some filet mignons on the grill. There's a really killing butcher shop up the road. Yeah, man, it was great. They ended up having a 4-day weekend. It was closed. Their school was closed for Juneteenth, so it was like pretty much Friday all the way into Monday, just hanging out with the kids, hanging out with family. Beautiful.
I love it. I love that. That's always a good thing, you know.
Man.
The more family time, the better.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right, so we'll kind of just start with some of the easier questions, and then as we go into the interview, we'll kind of move into some of the more technical, like, plugins, VSTs, those sort of things. And
Got you. Yeah.
Yeah, so real easy conversation, no big deal.
Cool.
Where did you come up with the name Left Field for your drum breaks and your drum break sample library?
It comes from being, first of all, thank you for acknowledging the fact that it actually has a name and it's not AJ Hall Drum Breaks, because I feel like people search for that and they don't always get the results. But the left field thing, I just came up with it because I'm left-handed and I play drums. When I play the drums, I play the drums in a really weird way, which is for anybody who knows about drum set playing. You're supposed to cross your right hand over your left, and this is the snare drum and this is the hi-hat. Very few people play like I do, which is where you play what's called open-handed, where the left hand is on the hi-hat. And there's only like a few drummers that really do it that way, and that's been a unique part of my sound as a drummer for a long time. And there's all these articles, because my mom and my dad are left-handed. So when I was a kid, they used to show me these articles about people that were left-handed, and you tend to use your left brain more when you're left-handed. I don't know if there's any real science to support it, but supposedly left-handed people are way more creative because they're left-brained. And, that whole thing with left field, coming out of left field, I like to think at least I'm doing something that hasn't really been done that much or hasn't really been codified just yet. So I kind of bundled that all into one thing, and with that logo, it's kind of like a baseball diamond, like the field, left field is highlighted in the logo. It has nothing to do with baseball. I'm trash at sports. It just comes from all the things being left-handed, left-brained, more creative, and just doing something that I feel is completely out of left field. So that's where the name came from.
I love it. It sounds like it's an all-encompassing name. And I noticed you said it's open-handed, right? That's the technique you play
Yeah,
as?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, my roommate's a drummer, and that was one of the first things he noticed when I was showing him your videos about your drum breaks and the way you play. He was like, oh, he plays open-handed. He's like, I don't know many people that play open-handed.
It's not really like a taught thing. Like if you go to school or you take drum lessons early on, like nobody's going to tell you to do that. I started teaching myself how to play drums really early on, and then by the time I got lessons, it was way too late to switch. So I had to stop with it,
Hey, I mean, it works. It's got a tone, it's got a sound, and it's definitely who you are. So it's totally working for you, it sounds like.
Definitely.
So kind of touching on where you started drums, how has your relationship with music kind of changed now versus when you were a kid?
Sure. I mean, when I was a kid, I was just a kid that loved all sorts of music. Got into hip hop in high school, and I was just playing drums for since I've 13. I guess 13 if you count before having a drum set, and then actually just getting a drum set when I was 14 or 15. So it's just been since then. It's just been any kind of music I can get my hands on. I ended up going to school from 2008 to 2012. I was at Florida State. So for what it's worth, I have a Bachelor of Arts in Jazz, Bachelor of Arts in Jazz Percussion, or whatever that piece of paper is worth.
Definitely,
so
that's awesome.
I studied real, straight ahead jazz 4 years throughout college, and, just more and more hip hop throughout that time. When you're in college, every college jazz musician has their MF Doom, Dilla sort of awakening, and that, mine was no different,
I love that. Yeah, I remember like when I was reading Questlove's biography, his book,
Right.
he was talking about how for a long period of time he prided himself on being almost like a machine and on the tempo so much. It was like more than a click, he said.
Yeah.
And then you have that moment, like you said, where you discover Dilla, MF Doom, and just this swing, this pocket, this groove, this drunken master drum style that's just absolutely game changing. And I remember reading that, and then for me, I listened to D'Angelo when I listened to Voodoo for the first time. I was like, changed my life, man.
Yeah. No, that record still, we've, like, as musicians, I feel like a lot of us still haven't really gotten free of the hold that album has on us. You know what I mean? That just is the Bible for so many people, you know?
I agree. I mean, for an album that came out in 2000 that has a completely analog sound, Russell Elevato, that engineer, absolutely incredible on the album.
Yep. Elevato is a genius, man. And that whole period, too, because it's the same cats on Mama's Gun, the Erykah Badu album. You know what I mean? It's that whole period that they rented out
Electric Lady
Studios, you know? It just became a sound that a lot of us still haven't really broken free from. Not that we need to, but it just became like that. A whole separate lane opened up, and everybody sort of went like, everybody just went 100%. Over that way, you know? Yeah.
I've heard that D'Angelo snare from Chicken Grease on so many records. It is wild.
Oh yeah, man. Oh yeah.
I know you're kind of an encyclopedia and fan of music as well. Like, I know another record that I really liked, I think we share a love of, is that first Meters album, which is absolutely incredible. Like, you know, that is like a good little chapter in the Bible of drums, I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. And recording sounds too, because that late 60s, early 70s is sort of the sweet spot for when things were, by today's standards, recorded poorly, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah.
But that to me is like drum sounds peaked with records like that. Like there's never been anything that sounds better than that to me. I mean, there's stuff that's functional for what you need for like radio hits and everything, like country music. Stuff sometimes needs to be squeaky clean, but those old Meters records, and even the stuff that was way less mainstream than those Meters records, is like you get these budget studios with budget tape machines, budget mics, untreated rooms, and people's quote-unquote mistakes from back then became a standard that people are now reaching for. As like there's that meme where it's like, back in the day, the guy's asking the sound engineer, like, how do we get it to sound less shitty? And it's like, oh, we press this button. And then now, hey, how do we get it to sound more shitty? Like, oh, we press this button. You know what I mean?
100%.
Like we're reverse engineering what came out of the late 60s and early 70s, and I'm 100% a part of it, you know?
Definitely. I love the tones and the sounds you're getting out of your drum breaks. I mean,
appreciate it, man.
From the tape machine you use to the Zulu hardware plugin, like, you've definitely already put me on game onto things that I'm like, all right, I gotta start stacking some paper and buying some of these pieces of gear.
Yeah, man, and it's
a game changers.
To anyone out there watching this thinking about getting a tape machine, don't get it for melodic samples. If you're just making melodic samples, it's not really gonna make that much of a difference. You're way better off with just the Waves J37 or the Kramer tape or the tape TAIP by Baby Audio, or there's dozens of tape plugins. You're way better off with just those plugins if you're doing melodic samples. And if you are going to put drums through a tape machine, whatever price you find that tape machine at, you're going to factor in an extra stack a year, I think, at least. And make sure when you go to buy one, make sure you've already sought out somebody in your town that really knows what they're doing when they work on tape machines. Because if not, they're all old. Unless you get one of these new ones that's like $40K, all these old tape machines are just that. They're old. It's old transistors, old wiring, old soldering. Something is going to go wrong, and you need to have somebody who owns a shop who can get it up on the table and get it back working, like, inevitably when it starts messing up, you know?
Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, that is a pro tip, because I feel like that's a lot of things that people don't factor in when they're buying any piece of gear, is maintenance. Yeah. Even when people are buying a car, you know, they see that Benz for a good price and they're like, oh, that Benz is that used Benz I want to buy is pretty cheap, and then you buy it and you're like, yeah, but the Benz maintenance still costs what a Benz costs.
Yeah. And I have 2 tape machines. You can kind of see it way in the back right there. Yeah, that's for when this one eventually has something wrong with it, and I take that one and move it over here. And then while that one's in the repair shop, I'm using the other. You know what I mean? Like, it's Definitely. But it's worth it because my drum sounds are like absolutely. I can still get it done. I've had remote sessions where I don't have access to a tape machine, and it's just me with the mics out of the board and my headphones, and I can still get it done, my drum break sound, but it's just so much easier when I flick on the tape machine. It takes care of a couple of different things that normally just take me a couple more extra minutes, which when you're making 50 drum breaks in a day, those minutes add up. You know what I mean?
Real fast.
Yeah, man.
So what would you say are some of the tonal differences to your ear? I mean, you've been doing this a long time. You've played a lot of breaks through, different volumes, different intensities through these tape machines. What are some of the tonal differences you really hear that kind of take it to another level versus like a plugin or something?
I mean, there's the headroom thing. Anytime you're running a signal out digitally into something analog and then back in digitally, you're going to get more headroom. And headroom is just, I'm not going to get into the science of it because I'm the least authoritative person on that subject, but you're going to get more headroom, and it's something about, even with this tape machine running my drums the way I do through the circuit passive, even without recording to the tape, even just the little preamps in here, driving them just a little bit, gives me a sound that a plug-in can just almost do. Like I said, if I A/B a break that I made with the J37 plug-in versus my real tape, unless you're on headphones or really good studio monitors, you might feel a difference in the knock of the actual drums a little bit. But as far as the tone, I've been using my ears my whole life, so it's so much less scientific than it is just visually looking at something and knowing what I need to do with it to make it sound like I need to. And it starts with the drums too,
Definitely. It all starts with the musician and the performance, and that's going to be the thing. The gear only enhances it.
Right, exactly. There's people that hit me up all the time and they ask, they say that I've inspired them to start making drum breaks and recording drum breaks of their own. And then the first question they ask me is like, what type of snare drum is good for a tight sound? And it's like, all right, well, you've already missed the ball because you've already got like 3 or 4 years of just sitting down and playing a drum set. You got to figure that out before it ever touches any of this stuff. You know what I mean? It's not like FL or Logic where you can just plug in MIDI with a really killing contact patch and then flip it and do your magic there. You know what I mean? Like, it's a physical instrument. It's an acoustic instrument. So when I make my drum breaks, I'm reverse engineering them from the moment I start playing. Like, when I start playing a break, I know how I'm going to mix the snare. I know what kind of reverb I'm going to use on the room mic. I know, just all those things. I know that if I take the pillow out of the bass drum a little bit and not bury the beater in the kick drum head, I know that I'm going to get the ring out of the kick drum head, so I know how I'm going to use. It's all this stuff that happens with just me being a drummer first before any of these plugins or tape machines get touched, So that's you have to reverse engineer them unless you're going to take a time machine back to 1969,
100%. And I love that. And I love also when you go onto your page, you're very transparent with your process.
Sure.
You're not gatekeeping by any means.
Yeah. And I mean, it's honestly, Kenny Beats and the Count definitely share this sentiment. Like, if you're like guarding the sauce, chances are you don't really have that much of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, for every drum break mixing tip I give or like plug-in cheat code I give, there's 30 other things in that break that I'm giving the example of that I'm not showing. You know what I mean? So I have no problem showing my process, because if I was to really show my entire process from start to finish, all 10 mics into the master channel, into tape, all that, it would take hours to do that for just one break, So showing little tips and everything like that with how I mix my breaks, I have no issue with doing that, because it's a tiny piece of the little jigsaw puzzle.
It's the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the whole description. Yeah, and right, just from the community, I know I can speak for a lot of people when I say just thank you for being so transparent and being able just
I appreciate that, man.
like
I've
knowledge is
always
power.
been that way too. I come from the stage. I'm a producer second. I'm a musician first. I've been playing in front of people. I've been playing music in front of people to make people feel good most of my adult life, So I got into production second. So I've never been one of these producers that's like afraid to talk to people or afraid to look into a camera or like put a sentence together or put a video together in like a very engaging way, because I've been doing that with music my whole life, So showing the process, I'm always going to do that, because even if I spill some sauce, by the time it catches on, I'm on to some other shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're always moving.
Yeah, exactly.
Nah, and it comes through in your personality. I can definitely tell, like, you're not just somebody who's been holed up in their bedroom alone creating music for a long time. Like, it definitely comes through in that you're easy to talk to. You're a good communicator,
I do appreciate that, man. That just comes from, like I said, that comes from the stage. You got. I'm about to leave on this tour with this artist named John Cleary, this piano player, killing piano player from New Orleans, and our entire show is engaging the room. You know what I mean? And I'm not even speaking on the gig, but just your energy has to be that, because we're a trio. We get out there in these sometimes 40-seat rooms, sometimes it's a 1,500-seat theater. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's a festival with 10,000 people wandering around, and you have about 5 seconds to sort of grab them and go, here, look at me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's
100%.
like your energy has to be that in the live musician world. So I like to think I've transferred a little bit of that over to the production world, where you don't have to be the mousy kind of just in your own world all the time. At least you don't have to be. You don't have to be the loudest guy in the room at all times, but just be a regular schmegular person. There's tons of producer podcasts that are full of that kind of information. Just don't be a weirdo.
Yeah, agreed. Just be genuine, be real, be honest. Don't. Yeah. We're all human at the end of the day. We're just trying to connect and share our knowledge, our story, our feelings. And you playing in a trio, I mean, that's like one of the purest forms of musical communication, I feel like. There's no bells and whistles to hide behind. It's just pure musicianship.
Right. And that I like to think, people ask me all the time, like, how does playing live transfer into my drum break playing? It does with my touch on the drums and just knowing how to get sounds out of different drums and different tunings and all that. But other than that, most of my career, there's been this parallel where I'm to all my like musician friends that just play and gig and tour. I'm the guy who's always talking about production, and they're like, can you please stop talking about compression ratios, please? And on the other side, to all my producer friends, I'll start talking to them about a Sly and the Family Stone record, or like what kind of snare drum was used on this Meters record. And they're like, bro, can you just make the drum break, please? You know what I mean? So I've always been the guy who talks to both sides and the ambassador from one side or the other. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I love that, though. I mean, it makes you like a unique gem in the musical world on both ends, though. I feel like, you're providing something to everybody always, and doing yourself a service by connecting with other people and putting them on game in either direction.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely.
Are you currently living off of your music? And if you are, how did you kind of make that transition happen for you?
Yeah, so it's kind of both right now. In 2020, stuff just completely collapsed. The live music industry collapsed basically overnight, And I was living with my wife and our daughter in New Orleans at the time. I was just gigging, working. I had a couple of drum breaks stashed away, like maybe 100 of them that I made, and I had I dropped my first sample pack in January of 2020, and I had kind of decided to move out of New Orleans back in October of 2020. So, October of 2019. So, all that stuff going on, COVID happens. Me and my wife and our daughter move from New Orleans to Tampa. Obviously, the housing market is completely gone. I don't know where I'm going to be making any money in 2020. So we're just staying with my in-laws for like 3 months here in Tampa. And I kind of, there's that saying, great entrepreneurs aren't made, they're cornered. And that's absolutely my story in this case. There was nothing going on with live music. And who knew what it was going to be for the foreseeable future in 2020? Nobody knew if anybody was going to play anywhere or do anything anymore in public. So I kind of just went full throttle with the drum breaks. We got this house, which we're in right now, which has my studio in it. You know, my back was against the wall, and I knew I had something killing with these drum breaks, because before 2020, I already had a few placements with Static Selecta on his album that came out late 2020, I think October 2020 or something like that. So I already had the sense that, like, I'm kind of on to something here, you know? I'm a drummer that understands hip-hop language. I'm also a drummer that understands the old funk records and just classic black music and that way of playing. So I fused those two worlds of hip-hop production and my own knowledge of that style of drumming. And I knew I was on to something, so I kept going with it all throughout 2020, up into 2021. And now, fast forward to 2022, I'm about to leave for a 2-week tour in Europe with John Cleary right now, tomorrow. And this tour is actually going to hinder my ability to get some drum breaks done here. You know what I mean? So the two areas of my career kind of flipped. I was a live musician, gigging, touring musician who did production and drum breaks kind of on the side. Now I'm a drum break maker, sample maker, producer who's clocking in here 9 to 5 every weekday, and I tour and gig on the side a little bit. You know what I mean?
I love that.
So the two careers kind of flipped, you know?
Yeah, and at the end of the day, you're just still doing what you love, which is playing drums.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So what are your daily habits sort of like for, you said, this is like a 9 to 5 to you. Kind of what's your daily routine? You know, when do you wake up? When do you go to bed? How's that kind of flow?
Yeah. I mean, I have 2 kids. I have a wife and 2 kids, so I'm not the 3 a.m. nights. Those may happen when I'm on tour because there's nothing else going on. But when I'm here, I'm not, unless I'm gigging at night and I come home late. When I'm here, I go to bed, at 11 p.m., 11:30 p.m. maybe, with my wife. We wake up, take the kids to school, and I'm clocked in here usually 8:30, 9 a.m.-ish, and I go all the way until 4:30 p.m. when it's time to go pick up the kids, and my day's over after that, Yeah. So that's pretty much weekdays, 9 to 5, whatever you want to call it. I'm in here, whether it's working on the next sample pack that I'm about to drop, or it's working on custom ordered drum breaks that I do for other producers that I make them from scratch and send them to only that producer. You know what I mean? Or it's recording on full songs, like full 2.5-minute songs with hits, and sometimes I'll make a chart for it and everything like that. Sometimes I'll have a full day of just that, So I love that. It kind of varies, but it's really in here playing and recording drums from 9 to 5 weekdays, pretty much.
Yeah, it sounds like a great process. And then do you take the weekends off to kind of do family time and that sort of thing? Yeah,
weekends are just straight family time. Sometimes if I really need to get something done, if I'm on a deadline, if somebody orders a rush order of like 50 breaks and I have to get them done that day and finish the next day, sometimes I'll take a Saturday morning and do something. But other than that, it's I have really no choice but to treat it like a 9 to 5. And when I'm on the road, that's when I make my beats and my melodic samples, because all I have is the laptop. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's when I'm making my melodic samples and full beats for artists and shit like that.
I love that, because I feel like a lot of people, especially young producers or sample makers, they kind of forget that it's like you have to take days off too. The balance of working a good majority of your time, but also taking time to relax and recharge really helps you come back fresh and creative. Yeah, it's real. That's very real. That's very real. And it's like, and further into that point, like having a schedule forces you to take those days off, Yes. 'Cause if you have a schedule laid out, if you do it 5 days in a row for a certain amount of time, the same time every day, you're going to take the 6th day off. There's no, you know what I mean? You're going to, that's just going to naturally happen, Even God rested on the 7th day. Yeah, exactly. That's right. You know what I mean? That's right. Yeah, so I love that. It's just being balanced and diligent with your time. And do you feel like having a routine has really helped up your output and like kind of creation process versus just sporadically creating? Absolutely, because I have it down right now. Who knows? By the time this circulates around the internet, I might increase my schedule or decrease it. Right now,
the pocket that I've found with my customers and supporters is one new pack a month, So that pretty much allows me, it'll take about 3 days to get a pack done, like really, really done and finished. And if it's not done by then, if it is done by then, the rest of that month is kind of custom breaks or just content or full song recording, you know what I mean? Or if I don't have that much scheduled, I'll really stretch out the process of making a pack and like really draw it out and get a bunch of different kits out and everything like that,
Yeah, I love that. You're really like finding the time. It's interesting to see how you can finish a pack so quickly, but you're still utilizing the rest of the month and your time to really build content around it and make sure it's marketed well and all that. I feel like that's just as big of a piece of it as creating it.
Sure. And sometimes it is a hectic week where, like, Cardiak will hit me for like 50 custom order breaks that day. Like he'll hit me on a Tuesday night, like, yo, I need 50 in this style, like tomorrow, Yeah. Because the way Cardiak works, he'll send what we've been doing. He'll send joints to Kelvin Wooten. Kelvin Wooten will lay almost full songs over what I send to Cardiak, and then Cardiak gets them and sort of shapes the song, gets the intros and verses and choruses, adds his little touch on it. And at the end of that process, they'll have a batch of 50 finished songs to send to whoever, you know what I mean? So it's like sometimes I'll link with people that work really, really fast and need drum breaks really, really fast. And then that's one of those months or weeks where it's like super, super hectic. But trust me, I'm very thankful for it. I will never complain about working hard. That's just not. I don't have that in me.
That's a blessing, man. That's something I would think I'm gonna hold dear to my own heart as well. As you never complain about working hard, especially in doing this kind of thing in this work we're in. Doing music is way better than digging ditches outside or doing something you don't want to do.
And I'll work 10 times as hard if it's something that I own, rather than working 10 times as hard for somebody else. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, there's that saying, don't quit your day job. Like, don't slack off everywhere. But, like, when you have something of your own and you know it's working, it's like, there's some days where the AC in here doesn't work as well as it does in the house, and I'm powering through it, sweating, getting 50, sometimes 60 joints done in a day, Like, it doesn't even occur to me that I'm working hard because I love doing this so much,
I love that. And Florida's no joke when it comes to the heat. I mean, I live in Palm Springs, California, and right now it's like 110 outside. So I know heat, but insane. Florida's got humidity, and it's just even gnarlier.
Yeah, man. It's for real. Yeah, man.
What is kind of like when you're creating your packs, how much time is spent necessarily playing or recording the break, and how much time is spent processing? Oh, you're good.
My speakers cut off for a second. What were you saying?
You're good. I was just going to ask, when you're creating the drum breaks, how much time is spent recording the break versus processing the drum break?
Recording the break, unless it's... So, I'll get reference tracks most of the time from people. When I make the custom breaks for people, usually they'll send reference tracks. If they don't send reference tracks, they'll send just whatever they want. They want a Griselda type thing. They want like a Knots type thing. They want, Good Kid, Mad City, Sing About Me is one that everybody sends me all the time to redo. I'll take those reference recordings or those references, and you can't see it right now, but I have 6 different full drum sets in here. So that's 6 kick drums, 6 sets of toms, and about 9 snares up on a shelf over there. And I have a whole bunch of cymbals. I got one sitting right here. I have a whole bunch of cymbals, and I rarely change mics unless I really want like a specific sound. So most of the time, the setup may take a little while and just getting all the levels right. But once I'm rolling, actually playing the pattern, unless it's a super difficult pattern, I just finished my drum and bass pack, and I actually recorded them at the drum and bass tempo, like 178 BPM. That took a long time doing a lot of those breaks. I'm sitting there going, that's like insanely difficult to do, especially if you want them to loop properly. But most of the hip hop type stuff, recording it, that's like 1 or 2 takes maybe, and that's 16 bars.
Yeah.
Most of the time is spent processing them here. Especially if I'm doing one of my own packs, I want each break to sound different because that's the culture of drum break sampling in hip hop. Is all these breaks come from all these different records, and they were with all these different drummers, all these different mics, all these different kits, all these different rooms, different years, different you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, not to mention the different thicknesses of vinyl that they were eventually printed on, where they are on the actual vinyl record makes a difference, whether they're closer to the center of the record or out on the outside, they get more distorted, whether or not. So all those factors is what I'm considering when I'm mixing a drum break. You know what I mean? I'm trying to make each one sound like it came from a different record or different place and time, maybe even a different person playing them too.
Wow. I love that, man. And it sounds like even when you're recording it, you're performing it even slightly differently and then processing it. Like, do you really diligently process each sound or each break differently, like with a little bit slight variation on the plugin? It's not like you're just recording a batch of 50 and then just using the same effect chain on the whole thing the whole time.
Unless it's specified like that. Sometimes I get that from cats where they say, I need 20 joints that sound like, the Black of the Berry. I need 20 different joints at that tempo with those type of textures. Just change up the pattern a little bit. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's set it and forget it on the master channel. But most of the time it's really changing up the sound drastically with each break. I really enjoy doing that. It's not a headache for me.
I love that.
I like getting all the different sounds that I can just out of the same drum set with the same mics.
Yeah. What are some of your favorite like snares or kicks or your favorite kits that you play?
So the go-to snare drum, and any drummer who really knows their stuff about hip hop will tell you, the Acrolite is the way. This is a Ludwig Acrolite. You can get them. This one's from the 90s. You can get crazy with them. You can look on eBay for ones from the 60s, but they run like $250, $300. It's nothing, Especially because most of the producers I know wear Yeezys and shit. Like you can afford.
Yeah. Of course.
But yeah, so the Acrolite kind of gets most of the stuff done. I have if you can see it kind of back there, it's the metal one in the middle. That's a Ludwig Superphonic. Those ones run a little bit more expensive. You can find one like that from the 70s. Those two kind of get most of the work done, but I still have a shitload sitting on that wall over there.
Yeah, you gotta have different colors for the palette,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like I have kicks that I use for the kind of open, kind of John Bonham sound, or I have a smaller kick that I use for like a jazz sound, or I have one that's just the bog standard kind of thump smack in the middle,
Yeah.
All those textures and all those tones. These are drum sounds that have been floating around in my head since I was a kid, Just listening to music, internalizing it, then playing the drums throughout the years, learning what different tunings do on different types of snare drums, what different areas of the snare drum you hit a certain way to get a certain type of sound. It's like it's a whole universe, And that's half of it. That's half the equation. Once you get over here at the desk, it's a whole other 50% that you got to work,
100%. And bringing those tones and those sounds that you've had internalized since you were a kid, and like bringing them to life now is probably just such a full circle moment for you, and it's so fun to create, man.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, that's one of the many reasons why I'm so grateful to be able to do this for a living. It's insane, man.
And you get to do it from home, and
Sure.
Your family gets to come home at the end of the day. It's not like you're stuck in a studio 14 hours a day, can't see anybody.
Right. And that's an interesting part of it too, because people have hit me up for studio sessions sometimes to come and do what I do. But honestly, I like to think the reason why people want my drum breaks is because they don't want to hire somebody to come through and set up mics and play and mix them and export them as a loop to the tape machine. You know what I mean? It's like the whole reason these drum break packs are what they are is so you don't have to do that. You know what I mean? I do that work up front and then present you with the fully loopable wave files just good to go,
Yeah. Hey, you're doing the work and you're making it easier for everybody.
Sure, exactly.
Backtracking a little bit, do you ever smoke or drink alcohol or coffee or anything when you're creating?
I'm definitely a coffee drinker, just because having 2 kids, it happens, I'm definitely a coffee drinker. Start the morning off with good Cuban coffee, Tampa style roasted espresso, real Cuban coffee, and then maybe an iced coffee during the day. There's been a couple of times where I've sipped a little something making breaks, but it's only because I'm at a studio session at night. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
While I'm creating, no, not really. On the gigs, yeah, definitely. I'll drink on the gigs, but I'm creating in the moment, and then that goes off into the universe. It's not a documented thing that I'm selling later on. You know what I mean? But yeah.
No, it's good to know. I mean, for me, I spent a long period of time, I live in Southern California. It's like stoner capital of the United States.
Sure, of course, yeah.
I just smoked for a huge period of time, and in January 5th, I stopped drinking alcohol, no weed anymore, no coffee. I cut everything.
Wow.
And it wasn't like there was like a rock bottom or anything. Like I had a problem with it, really, but I just decided, I was like, I'm going to cut all this stuff. I feel like I need to up my production and like creativity and output, because I felt like I was caught in this bad cycle of drinking coffee in the morning. I get energized, then I'd be really energized off the coffee, then smoke and chill, and then I'd be like, well, now I'm tired, so I gotta drink more coffee.
Right. I do have it down to a science where it's like a certain amount of coffee in the morning, and then around noon or 1, that's when I'll have another one, and that's kind of the cutoff. You know what I mean? Otherwise, you get caught in this vicious cycle. Yeah.
Definitely.
You got to regulate it. Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to know that, though. Like, I'm trying to, with this podcast, I'm always trying to show people, it's like a holistic thing, the lifestyle that goes with the music creation more than just solely what happens in the studio.
Yeah. And I mean, I think whatever lifestyle it is that you live, it should be consistent. Like Alchemist talks about, like being annoyed that he has to sleep. You know what I mean? Like I forget what interview it was. He was talking about like sometimes he doesn't even make it to the bed. He'll just lay down in the studio and then get right back up and get back to work. That's not me. I need decompression time, but works for him. You know what I mean? I think whatever lifestyle it is that you find is productive for you, just try and stick with that. Within within reason, I guess.
Well said. I love that. What are kind of some of the strangest places you've gathered inspiration from when you're creating your sample packs or your music in general?
That's a really, really interesting. Honestly, the first 3 drum break packs that I put out, Left Field Drum Breaks Volume 1 through 3, there's 50 breaks in each of those, and they're all really, really different. Because those 3 packs are from back in late 2019, early 2020, where I was recording like 10 a day and then having no deadline to finish mixing those 10, So it was literally just, let's see what this does. Let's see what we can do with this. You know what I mean? I feel like that was the most interesting time in my drum break making, at least, because it was just completely no goals in mind except like, that sounds interesting, cool, print, there wasn't any. Now I'm much more focused. I put out batches. Now my sample packs are much more focused. Like I'll put out 25 like 90s boom bap style. I'll put out 25 of these drum and bass type joints that I'm about to put out, or I'll put out 25 like 70s up-tempo funk type joints. You know what I mean? Now it's much more of a focused intent that I have with the packs. But back in the day, like 2-3 years ago, it was a complete free-for-all. Just like, that sounds cool. What if I made a break that sounds like, this Meters record, but with like really, really way lower tuned drums, It was just completely experimental back then.
I love that. I love that you kind of had a time where you got to experiment and like be creatively free. And then now it sounds like you kind of go into each batch of samples with a more focused, like kind of like a concept, would you say?
Yeah, and I mean, I still, Left Field Drum Breaks Volume 4 and 5, again, I like to keep that tradition with the bigger batches where those are just whatever I want at the moment. Because they don't have a title that suggests some sort of genre, It's just 50 joints that are hard hitting and just crazy sounding and just whatever I'm feeling at the time, I like to keep that a freestyle, and Left Field Drum Breaks Volume 6 will be that exact same thing. It'll just be whatever I feel like at the moment. I won't set a deadline to get it done, But lately my customers and supporters have really been feeling the themed sort of batches, you know what I mean? And for me, it's a lot of fun because I like really zoning in on a certain concept. I have a pack called One Mic, and it's exactly that. It's one single microphone for 25 drum breaks, And so that was a really interesting challenge and creative process just to see how dope I can make these things sound just using one mic at the drums, you know what I mean? So it's much more fun to dig into these concepts like that, and I feel like the customers appreciate that too.
100%. With the One Mic kit, was it? I think I saw a photo of it. Is it the one where it's placed kind of overhead at an angle slightly?
Yeah, sort of. It's for all my audio drum nerds out there, that it's one of the mics in the Glenn Johns position, or the crush position, or the center kit position. There's all these Waves tutorials and Chris Lord Alge tutorials on drum miking and all that stuff. But yeah, it was kind of above the bass drum, pointing at my knee, And okay. I used 5 different mics, but only one at a time, Oh,
awesome!
So just 5 different, like 2 different ribbon mics that I have. One really old one from like the late 70s, early 80s, like an interview mic that they used to use on TV and stuff. Yeah, that was just a cool process to see all the different sounds I could get just using one mic and still have the drum breaks hit like they need to.
Yeah, how did you make that happen? I know you're using different mics and those kind of things, but how did you make them slap still and cut through?
Just trial and error, honestly. Trial and error, and it's my process with mixing my drum breaks is so much less scholastic than it is just complete intuition, I'll dial in a specific compression ratio on the master bus sometimes, or a specific number on the attack and release maybe, but most of the time it's just been the production is the instrument, you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's you ask guitar players how do they get that certain sound, and it's they can't really put it into words. They can give you some pointers, but it's just there. It just is, because they've been doing it so long, and they know what they want that instrument to sound like. My drum breaks are the exact same way. I know what I want them to sound like, so I can pretty much get them there regardless of what I'm using.
I love that. That's just, goes back to our point that we were talking about earlier of it's the musician that really makes the break or the sample more than it's always the processing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not hating on people that don't play instruments at all. There's a lot. Sometimes people can get a lot better. Not better. Sometimes people can get really cool results with not knowing anything about music theory, anything about what actual voicing you should use on a guitar patch. You know what I mean? Some people 100%. Get great results with that. You know what I mean? I'm very well educated in theory, and sometimes I have to completely turn that off when I'm making beats or making melodic samples. Sometimes I have to ignore the equation that my brain is giving me with music theory. You know what I mean? Sometimes you got to turn that off and just go. That's kind of where I'm at most of the time making drum breaks. I'm not thinking at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny. Even for me, I've spent the last few years, I didn't go to school for music or anything per se, but I remember when I was 17, I got into some trouble. I was on probation for a few months, and I was like, well, I can't hang out with any of my old friends, can't really do anything. I picked up a music theory book, and I was like, let me learn music theory, and got into that. And then through YouTube and everything now, it's you can just go down this rabbit hole of learning, all these, borrowed chords, all these, just all the wormhole of everything.
Secondary dominance and all that, yeah, man.
Oh yeah, secondary dominance, tritone substitution, all that fun stuff.
Yep.
And it's so funny though, because then you learn all that just to kind of come back and realize, does it communicate a feeling? That's the real thing
absolutely.
At the end of the day.
Absolutely. One of my favorite examples of that is Beyonce "Drunk in Love." That 808 line doesn't follow the changes at all.
Nope.
It's just do 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 do, with all these beautiful chord changes going on. That's a decision that was made by somebody who either doesn't know anything about music theory or who chose to completely ignore what you should do. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
And it's killing. You know?
Yeah, again, like we both acknowledge, the song just hits and makes you feel good, regardless of the complexity or simplicity of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I love that. How do you kind of do your research when you're figuring out how to get the kind of period correct tones or genre correct tones when you're making each pack?
Most of the time that comes from just the actual playing, like the actual tones. I've done sort of some research on like old drum miking, but most of that was just checking what I already most of that was just checking what I had already made a decision to do, you know?
Okay.
Like if I put mics in a certain position, I'm like, I think that's like I'm listening back to the playback. I'll go, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it is, and then I'll go check it on some tutorial like, yeah, okay, we're good. You know.
I love that.
Most of the time it's just making sure I'm within the bounds, you know? As far as research goes, honestly, my career in drumming has been the research. You know what I mean? Just years and years of getting recordings to learn for a gig, and then after the gig, you go and listen to the rest of the album that you played the one song off of. You know what I mean? It's all floating around up here constantly. You know?
Definitely. It sounds very holistic, like, you know, learning the song, but then going back to the album, which
right, exactly.
You know, maybe you'll discover a song that you didn't even know was on there that you bring back to the breaks and just totally reshapes your process and your way of thinking. Exactly.
And I'm more as a drum break maker, I'm more tapped in with classic black music than I am with modern hip hop. You know what I mean? Like I'm an underground hip hop head till I die. Like Griselda, you know, Danielson and all them, Crime Apple, all that. I love all that shit. Honestly, listening to Drake and all of the modern stuff that's coming out, that's kind of maintenance for me. You know, that's kind of just keeping tabs on what's going on. But what I'm really digging on most of the time, I'm way more tapped in with the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s, because that you could spend your whole life just digging into that period.
So true.
So I'm way more tapped in with that than I am. I feel like a lot of sample makers listen to music that has samples in it and then go and try to make samples.
Yes.
What you should do is spend way more time actually really listening to the sampled music. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
Like that should be the school, not like, oh, let me make a Donda type sample. No. Back up.
Mm-hmm.
Find out what record that's from and then make that type sample. You know what I mean?
100%. I always heard a good quote similar to that is listen to your favorite musician's favorite musicians.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not trying to sound like an old head, like you got
not at all.
You got to go back, back in my day, what, it's none of that. It's just I like straight ahead jazz, classic soul and funk music, and coke rap. Those are my three kind of areas. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean you're hitting all the best genres right there.
Yeah, exactly.
And I feel like, a lot of the great sample makers, people that I really like, some of the best ones, like people like Came One, people like Motif Alumni, they really listen to that classic era of music and make samples based on the time. Even Al Hug, they make samples based on the time of real great musicianship and feeling more than always a kind of like a modern production approach.
Exactly. Yeah. You hear it in Al Hug's playing and his sound choices. Like you can tell a lot like me, he's way more tapped into that era than he is that era being sampled. You know what I'm saying? Yes. He's way more tapped into that actual era of music than he is paying attention to who's sampling what and trying to land placements by making samples. You know what I mean? Like you're not gonna land any placements if you're trying to make samples to get placed. Maybe you will. I don't know, but in my experience, every drum break that I've had that gets placed, its context in the beat that it gets placed on, I would have never thought. You know what I mean?
I love that.
Yeah.
What is kind of the intention when you get like a requested drum break? Not even the intention, but like what was the inspiration, I guess, behind doing requested drum breaks for producers and those kind of things?
It just became a thing that people started hitting me up about before I even made it a service on my website. And about 4 people in a row one week sort of asked me to do it and asked me what my rate was. And that's when I just decided, like, all right, let me just make this an official thing that you can click through on my website and order it. It goes straight to my inbox with your email with what you want, and you get it that week or maybe even the next day, depending on how backed up I am, you know. It just came out of people wanting that, and then I made it an official service that I offer, you know.
I love that. There was a need in the market, and you filled the need.
Yeah. And that's honestly where most of my packs have come from in the last year or so. The themed batches that I'm doing, like this drum and bass pack that I'm about to put out, or by the time this airs, it'll be out. The drum and bass pack came from 15 comments on TikTok like, yo, you got to do a drum and bass pack. Please do a drum and bass pack. Bro, a drum and bass pack would kill. I would definitely cop a drum, you know what I mean? And it was like, all right, well, I guess that's the next one, you know? Like I love that. As entrepreneurs, the common saying is you work for yourself. I don't work for myself at all. If you're watching this and you've bought my drum breaks, I work for you. You know what I mean? I don't work for myself. I'm not paying me. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I work for my customers, you know. So what they usually want 9 times out of 10 is kind of already what I have in the pipeline. Like the one-shot kit I just dropped. People were saying they wanted more one-shots, and then I announced it. And they were like, oh, yes, perfect. This is exactly what I've been needing. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I like to stay tapped in with my customers and my supporters that way. Because otherwise, I'm just in here making music for myself, which is cool. But I don't really want to do that. I like making music that I enjoy that is also consumable by the people who support me, you know?
Yeah, and at the end of the day, music is meant to be shared. Music isn't necessarily meant to be kept to one person. You're trying to share it with the world and those kind of things.
Sure. That's why the drum breaks, I think, have taken off like they have, because it's such a massive process that happens in here, and then all you have to do when you get a drum break from me is just put it right in the BP. Yeah, it's like, and I've now saved you maybe days of having to hire somebody to get a drum set, throw some mics up, get somebody who knows how to mix them like they do. Because a lot of mixing engineers, man, I've gotten in heated arguments with mixing engineers in studio sessions. Yeah, where it's like, bro, what is your reference for drum sounds? You know what I mean? Yeah, because it sounds like it's, you know, Steely Dan, which is cool, but like we're making hip hop right now, so I need you watch the engineer at the computer. You had a little saturation onto the mix bus for the drums, and they go from 0 to like 0.8, and they go, oh, that's that. Like, no, it's not. No,
more. Up that.
Yeah. So I like to think that I'm sharing my process with people, and by the time they get a drum break, the beat that they use it on elevates immediately, because you're getting 6 to 12 hours of work in just a wave file that loops for 16 bars. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I mean, that's kind of like the I guess the occupation that we have as sample makers and producers is diluting those hours of work into something that's easily usable by our community and our customers.
Yeah, man. And that's why a lot of these beats that are getting placed nowadays sound as insane as they do. You know what I mean? People, all the old heads like to rail against, like, oh, there's sample makers on this beat. Like, yeah, it sounds dope. You know? Yeah. Like, it doesn't matter if there's 8 sample makers on a beat. Is it dope or is it not? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Her is not in the studio listening to a beat by Chi-Chi or ATL Jacob and then asking, like, how is there more than 2 sample makers on this, or is this a sample from YouTube? Because we can't use it if there's 8 people. Yeah. Like, make the music. Don't worry about any of that other shit. You know?
Yeah, man. And I mean, even from the music we love back in the day, it's like you're gonna tell me music with whole string sections and a live bass player, live drummer. It's like they're not thinking like, oh, well, now there's too many people on this. Now
Marvin Gaye's "I Want You" is one of the most lush albums instrumentally. There's a shitload of stuff. Even his vocals. There's like 5 different harmony tracks and his lead vocal. You know what I mean? Yep. So it's like
it's a weird argument.
Yeah, it's I've never understood that whole thing. And old heads like to get on people that use sample makers. And it's like, bro, you back in the day you had a 2000 XL, you had a stack of records and maybe a floppy disk with some drums on it. Like, you're using samples too, dog. What are we talking about? It's just,
exactly. What are we talking about?
I've never understood that argument. I
agree. What was the music scene in the area where you grew up kind of like, or when you were coming up and like learning to play?
It's, it was kind of, I didn't really get started really digging into being a working musician until college. That's when I started playing a lot of jazz gigs, started playing a lot of hip hop gigs, and a couple of DJ gigs too. I got a whole 160 pounds of vinyl right here. I was doing a lot of that in college, and then after college, I should say, I moved from Tallahassee, Florida to New Orleans. So I was in New Orleans from 2008 up until April of 2020. Not 2008, sorry, 2012 up until April of 2020. So straight from college, moved to New Orleans. New Orleans is really where I cut my teeth as a just musician that works, plays, gigs, tours, plays with other people. Sometimes I would lead my own band, playing all different types of gigs in all different types of rooms, different stages, some mic'd, some not mic'd, straight ahead gigs, like big gospel church gigs with a click track, all that, the whole spectrum. You know what I mean? That 8 years in New Orleans is really, really where I cut my teeth and where I started to make drum breaks,
Definitely. And New Orleans is a big musical city. Like, it's been a musical town forever. And so I'm sure growing there and like really, getting your chops. I mean, you already probably had your chops up. You came out of college to there, but
a little bit,
cutting your teeth
yes
there.
And no. Yeah.
I love that. How did you make the connection with IllMind and Cardiak and some of the producers you're working with now?
So it like anything, it kind of snowballed. First it was static. I just DM'd him one day when I was riding the back of the van on tour. I just DM'd him one day when I had my first sample pack done, but it wasn't released. I hadn't had artwork done for it or anything. I just DM'd him one day and I said, yo, I'm a drummer. I make drum breaks. Can I send you some? I don't even think I said, can I send you some? I just sent him a WeTransfer link with the 50 that I had at the time, like here,
Here you go.
And he hit me back and he was on Instagram Live like that night using them,
Wow.
So that's how it kind of started. And I think it was kind of the same thing with IllMind. I just hit him up in like early 2020, just DM'd him like, yo, I'm a drummer. I make drum breaks here,
Definitely.
And the Cardiak thing happened. I think it was word of mouth. The Cardiak thing was kind of word of mouth, and or it might have been Matt McNeil too, who kind of looks after a couple things that I have going on. Matt McNeil, ex Dream Life, now starting at Warner, I believe.
Amazing.
He's a dot connector, man. You know what I mean? So he's kind of facilitated a lot of things for me and just a lot of connections and stuff like that. But honestly, I value those connections just as much as I do with a lot of these underground cats that I work with too. Because like I said, I'm an underground head till the death. So a lot of the underground records that I've ended up on, I love those records just as much as the Russ and Harry Fraud productions and just as much as the Kid Cudi song that I'm on. Like I value all that stuff just as much. It's all just as dope to me,
Definitely. Would you say that kind of that when you saw Static using your drum break kind of that night after you had sent it to him, that kind of instant feedback and that kind of confirmation of like, my shit is dope, would you say that fueled even the production process and creation even more, like right off that?
Yeah, that definitely ignited it for me because that was, I don't know if it gets more of a direct affirmation than that. You send somebody a sample and they're using it that night. On their live, it's not like they're using it and you found out they were. Like, they're not afraid to broadcast that they're using the shit that you sent them. So it sounds good enough for them to use and for them to let everybody in the world know that they're using. You know what I mean? So that was kind of an immediate affirmation, like, all right, I'm definitely on to something here.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, it was before your first break or your first pack was even out. So the fact that it was like instant and it was already being broadcast, you're like, all right, I got to be on the right path.
Yeah, definitely.
I love that. What is some helpful advice you'd give to sample makers or producers trying to connect with artists and other producers?
Trying to connect with artists and other producers, DMing is still a thing, but I would say, in my experience, pull up with value. Like, don't pull up with a question or with a pitch of what you could do if they were to respond to you or give you a shot. Pull up with something. If you're a melodic sample maker, make 30 joints and don't put them out in a pack and just send them to like maybe 2 or 3 producers. Maybe even 1 if you really have your eye on somebody. Other than that, if you get the opportunity to really talk to somebody or be in front of somebody, just don't, me talking on the phone with IllMind or, Cardiak or Static Selector, not to name drop, but me talking on the phone or via text with somebody like that. There's a mutual understanding that we both stand to benefit from whatever we're talking about, right? They're going to use some of my drum breaks. I'm going to get a placement or some money or both, man, right? But just let that be in the air, but don't address it in the conversation. Like, if you have a chance to be in front of somebody, don't bring up placements, Don't say the word placements or like put me on this J. Cole beat, or if you're working with this, you know what I mean? Pull up with the value, whether it's your actual samples, whether it's your actual mixing skills, show improve, and after a long while, then you can choose whether or not you want to talk actual details. Like, yo, did you end up using any of those samples? Like, I'll hold back on sending them off to other people if you haven't. And if you have used some of those, and if you haven't, all good. You know what I mean? Like, don't pull up and say, hey, I got these samples. Please let me know if you put them on a Drake song. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, yeah, it's a whole, networking is a whole thing. But for me, my drum breaks have spoken way before I ever have in a lot of these relationships,
Definitely.
Like
let the work speak for itself.
Yeah, exactly. My actual work that I've put out. And if you're a sample maker, don't have 3 posts on your Instagram. I know it looks cool. To me, it doesn't actually. Having 3 posts total on your IG, and they're like one of you with the phone like here, kind of off to the side, and it's like half your face. Yeah. That makes you look like a bot to me. I don't know what everybody's tripping about with this like mysterious mystique thing. Unless you're already famous, you don't have mystique. Nobody knows who you are. You know what I mean? Unless you're already famous, you can't have mystique. So I would say if you're a sample maker, have a shitload of very high quality examples of you doing what you do on your IG. Don't do the mysterious, a picture of you with like the money phone thing with like a Lil Uzi Vert quote. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Like if you're gonna give somebody the opportunity to tap into what you're doing, make sure that there's a wall of the shit and it's all high quality.
100%.
So then they tap into what you're doing, and hopefully their first feeling is like, oh shit, I've been fucking up. I'm asleep on this person.
Yep.
Rather than, who the fuck is it? All right, yeah, send me the link, bro. I'll check it out. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to put somebody through that first impression.
Not at all. And Al Hug even told me when we were doing the interview and I was talking with him, he said, the nice part is because I've built up like a great, not only just great packs, but my Instagram and my content that's on there has enabled me to not have, he's like, I haven't reached out to anybody in a year and a half. Producers reach out to me because they land on my page. They see the examples of everything I'm creating, and they just connect with me on their own. I don't have to do all the work.
I'm kind of in that same boat, and that's where I believe everybody should be. A lot of people are afraid to. It sounds so corny to say, but it's true. A lot of people are afraid to put themselves out there.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's a lot of people in the world. There's a lot of people trying to make it in the music industry. If you can't talk to a camera, you probably can't talk to a person that well. You know what I mean?
Well
if you can't make a video and post it on your Instagram about what you do, chances are you're not going to be able to communicate that very well and make eye contact with, God forbid you end up in the studio with Cardo. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You're probably not going to have those people skills if you don't actually practice just being who you are on social media. That's your business card. There are no websites anymore unless you sell sample packs like me. There are no websites anymore that advertise what you do. That's your social media, man. So.
And the website's more of a necessity for just getting the product than it is
exactly.
your brand. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, the brand is your social media, and like if that's lacking, or if you got funny style shit on there, like I don't know, just a random video of you like tripping somebody in your squad, like that's not gonna work, man.
No, I know for me, when I landed on your Instagram page, like I found it through Came1, and when I got to your page and saw your content, it made me, before I'd even delved into the breaks or listened to them, I was already a fan of you because I was like, this guy's human, he's real, he's a genuine human being. And I feel like a lot of people kind of miss that point, like how we were talking about being mysterious and needing this mystique. It's like, no, man, it's the opposite. It's the more real and transparent you are, the more people actually connect with you because they feel like they know the real you.
Yeah, famous people get to be mysterious. You don't get to be mysterious, and be successful at least. Be mysterious by all means, but don't expect anybody to reach out to you to further investigate what you have going on. You know what I mean? You either give it to them on a platter and say, here's what I bring to the table, and if you're really good at presenting that, you'll actually make them feel bad for not having tapped into you.
Yep.
Like at this point, a lot of producers not being tapped into me says more about them than it does about me. You know what I mean?
Well said.
I'm consistently doing the work of putting myself out there, my drum break packs and everything like that. You can find them. So it's like, when people do reach out to me, or I do reach out to people, 9 times out of 10, what I do has already spoken before me. That's where you want to get to with whatever it is that you do in the music industry.
Yeah, 100%, man. That is a valuable piece of advice.
Yes.
And I feel like that's just going to make people want to connect with you even more by just seeing this real human, this real person. Like, there's no... It makes them feel like an equal and your friend. It almost gives them even something to talk about if they ever do come across you in an actual conversation. Yeah,
exactly. I'm a regular dude that likes high art, and I'm an art snob that likes regular shit. Like that's kind of the pocket that I exist in.
That.
Like I'm a regular dude that will drink 4 Miller Lights with you, and also watch 4 Stanley Kubrick movies with you too. Like I like high art shit, but I'm also not so artistic that I can't make eye contact with people.
So well said. I feel like birds of a feather when it comes to that. Definitely.
Yeah, man. Real. Very real.
Do you feel like on any given day you could create a sample or a drum break that you would love, regardless of what's hot or not in the sample making world?
Oh yeah, that's the whole reason. My drum breaks, for the most part, are what I want them to sound like within a certain realm or area or genre. My drum breaks are 100% like if you haven't seen my Instagram, a lot of my Instagram is me yelling about my own drum breaks. You know what I mean? So it's pretty much like I really enjoy getting super grimy recorded drum set sounds. Like that's what's my ear's been drawn to that since I was a little kid,
Yeah. And watching you be excited about the breaks when you come up with a new tone or sound makes me excited as a viewer, as a listener.
Sure.
Yeah, man. Like when I see you like gassed on a drum break, or like, a processing the way you use the tape machine. Like I love when you do the before and after, you'll play the break and you'll be like, listen to it with the tape, and I'm like, shit, man. It makes me want to go grab a tape machine, or makes me want to, up my shit even more. And I love that because at the end of the day, that whole like mutual excitement of creating music and just mutual excitement and zest for life. That's like
Sure, man.
something that I'm chasing, man. And it's a beautiful thing to see when somebody else is excited. It makes you feel like, even if you're having a bad day or not the best week, you're like, well, shit, man, this is brightening my day and making me excited to go into the studio because this guy can do it. I can do it too.
That's real, man. I'm glad I'm having that effect on at least one person, man. It's great.
I guarantee you it's more than one, brother. You're doing well.
Hell yeah.
Typically, from the time inspiration strikes or it takes you to come up with a break, how long does it usually take you to have like a finished idea? I know you can do them pretty quick, but like kind of like do you like record the batch of breaks and then process them all kind of thing, or was that like for you?
Usually it's one and then I come right back over here. Usually it's here. I'll show you. Look.
Let's do it.
Walking over to the kit, playing, right?
Yep.
Then getting up, coming right back over here, and starting the mix. You know what I mean? Running the tape, starting it, the whole deal. You know what I mean? So it's back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I never really record a bunch of them first and then come over here and mix, because that's how you get stagnant with your process. You're hearing the same thing over and over and over and over and over. You know what I mean? Every time I start mixing one, I've had a pause where I'm just listening to the click in the in-ears to record it, you know? So it's like you get a reset every single time.
I love that. That's so helpful for creation, because I can definitely vouch for the fact that once you hear something too long, especially when I'm making melodic stuff, like I'm not a drummer, obviously, so I'm not making breaks, but I can vouch for if you hear anything static for too long repeatedly, you just kills your creativity.
You get ear fatigue, yeah. Yeah, man.
It's a very real thing. Are there any tricks or production techniques you have to make your creation process quicker and easier?
Templates are always a good thing. Every time I make drum breaks, I'm opening up a template that I have with all the mics labeled, you know, already set up, going through the master channel. I'll move plugins on the master channel around a whole bunch, so it's never a set it and forget it thing. Other than that, just I want to say know what you're doing when you sit down, but sometimes it's better to not know what you're doing when you sit down. Sometimes it's better to just let it hit. You know what I mean? For me, the way I've been working the last 2 years, I almost have to know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I have deadlines. I have people who ordered custom breaks. I have a pack that I need to put out. You know, most of the time I have like a schedule or an actual agenda, which helps me get a lot done.
Definitely. When you're kind of processing, you have your templates. How much are you doing like on each individual channel versus how much you're doing on like the master channel as a whole?
There's a good bit of it that happens on each channel with each mic. I have 10 mics. There's a good bit of it that happens, but that's very little of that is compression or saturation. All the compression and saturation happens on the master channel. It's mostly just EQing and shaping and getting rid of overtones on some of the mics. Sometimes I'll purposefully high pass the kick up to like 80 just to force some low end back out after the tape. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Or sometimes I'll take the low pass all the way down and let everything even below 30 hertz through on the kick just to reshape it later on the master channel. Sometimes I'll do that with toms where I want less lows out of the floor tom because the fill that I played it's like way too much boom. Shit like that, you know what I mean? A lot of EQing gets done on the top snare mic from break to break, just whether or not I want a cross stick to sound like a tennis ball, or I want it to be really light and back in the mix, you know what I mean? That kind of tweaking goes on with each channel. Most of the tone shaping and different saturation and reverbs and all that happens on the master channel.
Awesome. No, thank you for sharing that. I love when you did, I saw a little trick you had where you were doing I believe it was the reverb on the room mic, and then you had it with the doubler and like high pass. I thought that was an awesome trick, and I tried it as soon as I saw that video, and it definitely made the drums way more spacious and wide. It was a great trick.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
So thank you for sharing those kind of things, man.
Yeah, man.
How do you stay inspired musically and creatively?
Musically and creatively, honestly, it's like I said, I'm more tapped into classic black music than I am to modern hip hop. So it's like I'm listening to old. Right now, I'm kind of on this yacht rock kick.
Yeah.
I'm like really into like my air supply and airplay and Greg Phil Gaines and all that stuff. So I'm really kind of into that, which I'm probably, after this drum and bass pack, it's probably going to be a yacht rock type pack, which is all dead, super dry drums, no room sound, no reverb, just dead, kind of fatter tones. That's lately it's been, I'll listen to a lot of the music that matches whatever pack I'm about to put out.
Yeah.
Like with this drum and bass pack, it was nothing but like Shy Effects and Goldie. There's two UK drum and bass artists, and that I was listening to it around the house with my kids sometimes. So yeah, a lot of my inspiration for the drum breaks just comes from whatever genre I feel like they fit the most in. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. When I was doing my 2 Word is Bond packs, when I was doing my 2 slow burn packs, those are my most Griselda-ish type packs. So it was Hitler Wears Hermes 7 side A and side B, like that whole month, you know. So it's just whatever genre I feel like fits the most.
I love that, man. I love the fact that this whole holistic thing of listening to a lot of music. Like, you know, you'll listen to either old music you already know or music that's new that you're getting put onto from old records, obviously. You'll listen to it for a while, and then that inspiration leads into a pack that you create. It's it's like this flow of excitement of like, all right, I love this. I love listening to this. Let me create a pack based on this. And then you can dive into the next genre or whatever it is you decide to hop on or get inspired by next and create a pack of that. And it just keeps life like enjoyable and exciting.
And that process happens sometimes from break to break. Like if I'm doing a bigger batch to put out and it doesn't have a theme, that happens from break to break where I'll literally tune up one of my snares and be like, oh, that's kind of giving the God Made Me Funky type of snare sound. Like, let me make a couple joints in that vein, and then I'll take that off. I'll put that one back on the wall, take out another bass drum. Like, oh, this bass drum's giving me kind of a like Led Zeppelin when the levee breaks sound. So let me completely re-engineer the way I have my master channel set up, and let me make it sound like this giant staircase that I'm recording in, and make a couple breaks like that. You know, that sometimes that'll happen from break to break to break. You know.
That's amazing, man. Like, and again, just the whole following your joy and just letting it kind of dictate where things go. It's like, it shows you that life will take you in the right place as long as you're following the things you love.
Sure. Yeah, man. It's in my experience, at least. You can't go wrong doubling down on. You can't go wrong doubling down on what you really love doing, because 9 times out of 10, what you really love doing is what you're going to become really good at doing. You know. And that becomes a cycle. You really love doing it, so you get better at it. You're getting better at it, so you love doing it even more. You love doing it even more because you're getting better at it, so you get even more better at it. You know what I mean? Those two things just keep bouncing back off of each other. You know.
I love that, and then that's how you get to where you need to be in life. It's
just
exactly. Perfect.
Yeah.
What are the times you find yourself having the most fun in the studio?
Honestly, it's all the time. When I'm having the most fun is when I don't know. It's honestly. Oof, man, that's like asking, when am I playing drums?
I love that.
Yeah, honestly, like when it gets a little bit tedious is when I'm in the middle of a day where I'm on like number 47 of 50. Yeah. And I just want to finish it and like go eat dinner. I'm like, all right, you got this. And I'm like starting to get ear fatigue, but I kind of power through it, you know. Those times are where it gets a little bit laborsome. But at the end of the day, I'm still making drum breaks for a living, so it's amazing, you know.
I love that.
Yeah.
What would you say is the AJ Hall kind of signature sound, if you had to define it?
Oh, wow. Shoot, I would say visit leftfielddrumbreaks.com and you'll find out. Honestly, like my drum break sound, I'm gonna use a big word here, so please don't think I'm being douchey, but my drum break sound is an amalgamation of all the drum sounds that I've been listening to since I was a kid, up from the 60s, like old Dick Dale recordings, old Alan Toussaint productions from New Orleans from the mid and late 60s, you know, some of the Steely Dan stuff, the drier stuff. Then you get into the mid 80s where everything was really tight and gated reverbs and all that. Then you get into the 90s where the room mics were really important and like all that stuff, plus about 4 terabytes more of information. It's all up here all the time. So that plus just my style of playing that I've developed over 15, 16 years, that is the AJ Hall drum break sound, I guess. That's probably the least concise definition of it, but the most concise definition of it is on leftfielddrumbreaks.com. So
links in the description, don't worry.
Yeah, man.
Man, that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. I love that. Like, I truly feel like you're going to be somebody who's, I mean, if you're not already held in high regard, you're going to be somebody that we could look back on 10 or 15 years from now and hold in a very high regard as somebody who put in the work. He did the research. He did the work. Like, he did everything himself and learned to put together these great pieces of art and great pieces of music that really contributed something to the musical culture and world.
I appreciate that, man. I do appreciate that. You know, I like to think I'm doing something right, you know.
I definitely feel like you are.
Yeah, man.
Quick side note, do the kids play any instruments or anything?
My kids, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we have a 5-year-old and a 11-month-old, so nothing bubbling quite yet. My son, the 11-month-old, he kind of perks up when you put something on the radio, put something on the stereo. I have a 1972 restored Magnavox console with the original turntable in it. That's kind of the centerpiece of the living room. So whenever we put something on there, he kind of perks up and starts bopping up and down a little bit. So maybe there's something there, but I'm not one of those musician dads who's like, you gotta get into the family business just like your old man. Like I've never been. I don't come from a line of musicians. My father is a bass player, and he taught me a lot about music and just showed me a lot of stuff back in the day. But I'm not one of these people that comes from a long line of drummers. To be honest, I think that's kind of corny when you just like kid comes out of the womb and you're like, all right, here's you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Here's what I do, and you have to you're named after
business.
Me. You have to be this. It's like, stop, man. Like, don't
let them decide themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If my kids get into music, great. If they don't,
Still
maybe even better.
Support them.
Yeah, maybe even better, because this shit is not for the weak, man.
Well said. Definitely not.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
All right, man. Well, we'll move on to my For the Nerds section. This is kind of like the plugins, VSTs, digital kind of, or, any processing, that kind of thing.
Shop talk. Yeah, man.
Yes, sir. What are some of your most regularly used plugins and VSTs?
Regularly used plugin, the granddaddy of them all, the BPB Mag Dirty Filter. It's a free plugin that is almost always the last thing on my master channel. It just the way it's a distortion with a low pass and a high pass filter and a slope for both of those filters, right? So something happens in that plugin after tape, where the way it interacts with tape hiss and real tape distortion is fucking bliss. Like, I don't know what it is, but it almost always gets tweaked a little bit from break to break. Just that one plugin. That's one of my favorite things ever. And it's free. I think they're putting out a paid version of it pretty soon. But Bedroom Producers Blog Dirty Filter. Honestly, you can compare it to the distortion section in RC20 if it had a little bit more parameters. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of that sort of vibe, but I don't know, man. It's a magic plugin. Another one, I would say, Black Rooster Audio has a really killing spring reverb plugin. I feel like there's not a lot of spring reverb plugins out there.
No,
Black Rooster Audio makes a really, really good one. It's the only one they make. I forget what it's like Pro SPR, I think. PRO-SPR. That's a really killing one that I use a lot. I'm trying to think. What have I been really into lately? Here, let me pull up my session file.
Yeah, no worries.
I'll go over here. Switch my screen over.
Yeah, that's okay. A couple ones I've caught or seen you use before. Like, I love when people take R-bass and they kind of process like a kick with R-bass.
R-bass for the kick is amazing. Decaps. This is another one. Decaps knock plugin is fire. I don't give a fuck how much it costs. There's producers out there watching this right now wearing $200 jeans. So like, Decaps knock plugin, dog.
It's an
my
investment.
Goodness. That thing is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So I will say the thing that I've been really into lately is the Slate plugins, the Slate digital
Oh yeah,
bundle.
I got that bundle.
Those are absolutely amazing, man. Even just the interface and the way you build a channel strip within one plugin, super dope, man. Oh my god.
I agree.
Steven Slate, and his story is really inspiring too, because he kind of came from just having drum sounds, and then he built this plugin company that is going with modern times in the subscription model. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I feel like Waves is eventually going to go there
with
the subscription model, and Steven Slate said, fuck it, we're going subscription because everybody else is going that way. Why fight the tide, you know?
I've been on it 2 years, man.
Yeah. So the Slate bundle is a really, really good one. There's a plugin called Amplify by a company called 12-Bit Soul. That is a SP1200 emulator. So
wow,
for all my youngins out there, the SP1200 was a sampler in the 90s that a lot of classic joints are made on. And just something happens when you run drums through one of those samplers. That plugin, 12-Bit Soul, the company, amplifies the plugin. That plugin is really, really killing for getting real lo-fi yet hard-hitting drum sounds, you know?
Definitely.
And honestly, I'm going to just mark this, whoever's watching this, because this will be a time capsule. About 5 or 6 years, I'm definitely going to drop a plugin. I don't know which company it's going to be with, but I'm going to drop a plugin that is sort of my master channel processing in one unit. You know what I mean?
Let's go. I'm hyped.
Like kind of RC20, but only for drums. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm working on. I want to get with the right company who can really spread it as far as I need it to go. But that's definitely going to be a thing in 5-6 years time. You know.
Yeah, man. I mean, you're definitely putting in the groundwork and all the research and like hands-on work now. That's going to pay off later. I mean, your ear alone, just training it how you have, is going to feed that plugin and that information so well. And I know it's just going to change the community. Yeah,
man. Yeah, it's real. As far as melodic samples go, Scorch by Sauceware Audio, my best friend Jacob, that thing is absolutely insane. Scorch is more so than like Cthulhu or I don't know, any of the more super modern hip hop VSTs. Scorch is absolutely ridiculous, and they have more expansion packs for that too. I find myself using that a lot, because on the plane I don't always have time to get the MIDI board out. I can either, like in a plane seat, I can either have my laptop or a MIDI controller. I rarely have room for both. You know? So Scorch has a really great chord generator in there, and it's different because it has just not only chords within a certain scale, it'll have different voicings of the same chord. Like it'll give you a G minor with a C as the highest note, and then maybe the next key will give you a G minor with a C as the highest note, but now there's just an A in there, so it's a G minor 11.
9, you know what I mean? Or 9, yeah.
Like, yeah. So like it'll give you these chord generations that aren't just blah 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 blah. You know what I mean? Which I hate. It's just not. It's not creative at all.
It's not usable. I mean, it's usable, I guess, but it's not musical. If that makes sense.
Yeah. It's not inspiring.
Exactly.
Yeah, Scorch is definitely one of those ones. That thing is crazy.
I love that. What are some of your most regularly used instruments or pieces of gear that you have? I know you have a lot of drum kits and stuff, but what would you say are some of the most essential ones that you're using regularly?
The most of the time, let's move this desk chair out of the way. You'll be able to see it.
Yeah.
So most of the time, that is the kit that's getting used. That is a 1960s made in Japan kit, and it's kind of been my go-to as of late. It's kind of been the kit that can do it all. I can tune it up really high and get sort of a David Axelrod kind of vibe out of it, or I can keep it really low and get a nice thuddy, fat kind of yacht rock tone out of it. That's been kind of the go-to lately. Although I have 6 other drum sets around here, that's kind of been the go-to. Zildjian cymbals, I endorse Zildjian cymbals wholeheartedly. They're kind of the shit for just old school textures with modern functionality, you know.
Definitely.
Other than that, I mean,
tape machine.
Yeah. I mean, a tape machine, 1/4-inch tape machine. But like I said at the beginning, if you're gonna get one, don't get one thinking your melodic samples are gonna sound better than RC20. You know.
Yep.
if you're gonna get one to use for drums, it's a rocky road, man. It's perilous. Make sure you got somebody to set one up. Make sure you got somebody to repair one. Yeah, it's a whole thing. Tack on at least another stack onto what you pay for the tape machine.
Yeah, well said.
Other than that, I use a periscope mic a lot.
I saw that recently on your Behind the Breaks. It was awesome.
Other than that, it's this guy right here. This is a condenser microphone with a compressor built into it. So, and it's kind of set to nuke. You know, it's a compressor that you just play drums in front of it and doing something like boom, cat, boom, boom, cat. Just from this mic, it'll go because you get all the room sound bouncing back. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's been one of my secret weapons.
What are some of your favorite microphones that you like to use, or is it just kind of like a case by case thing, or what do you?
It's kind of a case by case thing. I've really been into my overhead. You can't see it, but my overhead right now is a Cascade X15. It's a stereo overhead ribbon. It's got 2 capsules in it, so it takes 2 cables to go into it. Oh,
awesome.
Yeah. So it kind of gives me, I put it in the center of the kit, and it gives me a nice left and right image. Other than that, it's just whatever mics I can get, whatever mics I'm using. My first placement was on a Kid Cudi song, and that was recorded in a very untreated room with almost stock Logic plugins. Wow. And like 5 mics, I think, that I very hastily put up. You know, that's "Loving Me" by Kid Cudi, for anybody wondering.
That's amazing. I'm definitely gonna go listen to it.
I did the break on that song very haphazard. I think it was like one of the first breaks I ever recorded. You know, just setting mics up, seeing what I can make that sounded cool, playing. You know, that ended up on that song. So don't think too much about gear.
Yeah, it's just, again, the musician, the touch, the break.
Yeah, it's the intent. You know what I mean? It's the intent way before anything else.
Well said. Is there a good budget way you would recommend getting the reel-to-reel tape sound or analog saturation if you don't own like Zulu or a tape machine? Yeah,
I mean, honestly, the plugins, if like I said at the beginning, if I was to A/B some drum breaks with and without the tape machine, and then without the tape machine, my sort of process with plugins, you can pretty much get it done with plugins. The Waves J37, Magnetite by Black Rooster Audio, Tape, TAIP by Baby Audio. There is, what else is there?
Slate has the virtual tape machine.
Slate has a good one. It's kind of one-dimensional because it's kind of meant to be a 2-inch like finisher. You know what I mean? Okay. It's not meant to give you that grimy sort of sound.
No, it's like a mastering one.
Right. Which is why I'm talking about dropping my own plugin way down the line. There's no good 1/4-inch tape machine plugins that really do what I want them to do, that really do what I do with this or that other tape machine back there. So that's going to be something that I put out way in the future if I can find the right company that can really dial in the sound like I need them to, you know.
Amazing.
But other than that, man, J37, can't go wrong, man. J37, Kramer tape, Magnetite, Baby Audio's tape, and the Slate joint. One of those will pretty much get you there.
Perfect. If you were someone who wanted to make their own drum breaks and packs, what are some helpful tips you'd give them when it comes to recording and processing?
Don't focus on recording and processing at all. Listen to the old recordings. And don't just listen to them for the purpose of, I'm going to listen to this 70 hours of recording, and then I'm going to get a drum set, then I'm going to get mics, then I'm going to get artwork done, then I'm going to have financial freedom. You know, like, if you're thinking about making drum breaks because it's a lick, because you've seen people doing it, stop. Stop dead in your tracks right there. Do it because you love the drum sounds. Don't do it because there's a need for it in the industry right now. You know, because you're going to spend a lot of time just doing the research of what these records sound like, how these guys played back in the day, the touch that they used on the drums, the language of a lot of that 70s funk drumming. You know what I mean? That is way more important than any of the processing I do, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well said. Thank you for that. What are some of your favorite ways to transform or reshape a sound, or ways that you feel like aren't being used enough?
I feel like not a lot of people are. I feel like distortion in general is just frowned upon in a lot of the industry.
It's odd.
And there is only good or bad. There isn't.
Yeah.
There is peaking, not peaking, clipping. That exists, but that is under the umbrella of good or bad. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's like something either sounds dope or it doesn't. That's it. There's that interview with 40 talking about mixing one of Drake's earlier records to sound amazing coming out of a laptop. You know what I mean?
Headlines.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah. Frowned upon in the industry, right?
Yeah.
Worked for Drake.
Sounded
so
great.
It's under the umbrella of good or bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like even when, Hendrix was making his records with Eddie Kramer, it's like that distortion and that tone was like frowned upon because it was recorded so loud and distorted. Yet this is something we covet now and like completely reshape music as a whole.
No, the Voodoo Child guitar sound is a coveted thing. That guitar only sounds that way on that record because it's literally drowning out everything else in the room. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like a lot of these, and with drum breaks too, man. A lot of these older drum breaks sounded the way they did because they were improperly recorded in untreated rooms. And now that's become a coveted sound. So does it sound good or does it not sound good? That's it.
That's all that matters.
Yeah, man.
What are some of the most underrated or slept on plugins or gear in your opinion?
Slept on plugins. I feel like people sleep on the native plugins in whatever DAW they're using, Yep. I have a lot of plugins that are just native to Logic that I use all the time, But that being said, I feel like a lot of people sleep on using the plugins that they have and really digging into what they do, I feel like a lot of people get the Waves bundle and they're like, all right, well, I guess this is what I use. And then 5 months later, they're looking for something else because they can't get the sound they want, It's like really dig into what you have already. If you do get a big bundle of plugins, really dig into what you have already because I guarantee you there's some other. Wave just put out the version 14 where they added mix knobs for almost every plugin that they have out. They added like a wet dry on almost every plugin in version 4. I'm about to go nuts with that.
Hell yeah.
Wet dry mix on the Waves R bass. If you can have it just absolutely nuclear radiating, but have it at like 30%, oh my God.
It's going to be insane.
Yeah, exactly. So just dig into the plugins that you already have. That's what I would say. And the gear, slept on gear, especially with recording, playing is slept on. Like good touch on the drums is what's slept on more than mics, preamps, all that. People ask me about mics and preamps and all that stuff, and it's like I have a couple of good preamps, I have a couple of good mics. Once again, my first placement is on a Kid Cudi record, and none of that was used.
Yep.
So it's all about what sounds good. It's all about what sounds good.
So true. I remember talking to Jimmy James, Mario Luciano's guitar player guy.
Yeah.
And
I know him. We were on the same couple of gigs in Brazil back in November. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, Jimmy's an amazing guy. And I remember FaceTiming with him, and he was showing me some guitar stuff, and his touch is what makes the tone. It's not the guitar, it's not the amp, it's the touch and the way he plays. And I remember even kind of, you touched on it a little bit earlier, but trying to communicate with him, I was like, I was like trying to get technical about it almost. I was like, okay, are you palm muting or what are you doing? He's like, I don't know. Like people have kind of told me I'm palm muting, but it's just the way I play it.
Exactly. And in the world of hip hop production, now circling back again, we're in this wave again of like sampled music and sample libraries and real instruments coming back into the fold, whether it's on the record itself or in a sample that's being made with live instruments. We're in this fold where a lot of hip hop producers are looking at live instruments the same way that we look at something in FL or Logic or Ableton, where it's just like, all right, this knob goes this way and then it sounds like that and you're done. Or like this MIDI gets clicked in this way, and then you put the cable guy's halftime on it, and it sounds like that, and you're done. Like there's a whole thing that's been lost, that's not being considered with actual musicians playing actual instruments that you have to touch to make a sound. You know what I mean? So
100%.
like that process has to be respected, and I feel like it is, which is why there's this giant rebirth of sample libraries, because actual instruments being played on a lot of these records again.
Definitely.
Whether it's live or by proxy in a sample that gets used by the producer, you know.
Yeah, I know for me, it's like me coming up, like playing guitar. I played violin when I was younger. Like I play bass and these instruments, and I can tell, like I'm sure the same way you can tell when you hear a drummer. It's like you can almost hear the level of experience and hours they've put in playing their instrument just in the few seconds of hearing them play, you know?
Yep. Intent. And that's achievable digitally too, you know? Like you know it's an Alchemist beat as soon as you hear it, you know?
Yep.
Like that's achievable by just using samples. Don't get me wrong. Everybody has their musical identity. Everybody can have their musical identity, but the touch of somebody playing an instrument that they actually play and didn't just buy one to start making a sound on, you know? Somebody who's actually connected with their instrument, that's something that you just cannot fake, you know?
So true. What is some secret sauce that you wish you had known earlier on when you started out making music?
Wish I had known earlier on just to start making drum breaks. Once I figured out that, it really clicked that everybody's favorite drum breaks were recorded poorly, quote unquote. Then it just opened up the floodgates. Like, fuck it, I don't need to treat my room. I don't need to get an $8,000 mic just to use as an overhead. You know what I mean?
Nope.
I don't need Neve preamps. I'll get some eventually. I don't need those. You know. Once that clicked, that like I had all the tools. I had a wealth of knowledge in hip hop and a wealth of knowledge in actual real life funk drumming in the field. Once I figured out that I could just marry those two, it was over, you know.
Definitely. I love that, man. Do you offer any drum break creation and like processing courses or lessons or like mixing lessons or anything like that?
I do, with drummers that have their own recording setups at home. I do offer one-on-one Zoom lessons where I'll share the audio from their computer and just sort of guide them through the process of using whatever plugins they have, whatever mics they have, and just not getting them to sound like my drum breaks, just getting them in the mindset of making hip-hop style drum breaks. You know what I mean? Just getting them in that mindset of like, okay, you sat down to play this, but, you know, you got to play it with the click so it'll loop properly. So why don't you record that again so it'll loop properly at the end? You know what I mean? Leave out beat one at the end of the phrase so you're not having to shave off a kick drum hit at the end of the loop. You know what I mean? Like just getting cats into that mentality. I definitely do offer that. So just if you're watching this, hit me up in my Instagram DMs, or maybe by the time this airs, I'll have that as a service on my site. I'm still working on it, you know.
Yeah, it's good that it's always evolving. You know, you're always finding something new to add.
And there's a shitload of free stuff on YouTube that I've put out of me mixing my own drum breaks too. So there's already my Instagram and my YouTube channel. There's a shitload of stuff on there.
I definitely went to your Instagram, and you have like I forget what they call it, a highlight. It's like a highlight reel where I went through that whole thing of just seeing the processing and all that, and it's like a year or two old, and I was like, I'm going through this and digesting everything. I'm a research guy.
There's a whole bunch of it in there, man.
To learn about my stuff.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, we'll do, this is my final 5 questions. This will be, they could be one sentence or one word answers. They don't have to be very long if you don't want them to be, but if you want to elaborate on something, you totally can.
Killing.
What is something you wish more people did in their music?
Just cared. I feel like a lot of it in the upper area of the industry is just like what's hot.
Yep.
Let's make 10 joints like that so we can send them out. Like the messages and custom orders that I'm about to get for like house style drum breaks.
Oh, it's about to go insane.
It's about to go absolutely insane. The Beyonce song just dropped, and like I'm about to be in here for fucking months. I know. So, and that's cool, but If you don't really like house music like that, don't think that like, all right, now I'm gonna make 30 house beats. One of them's gonna land. It might, but like that's not really the way to go about this. Like you gotta actually have love for that music first. So yeah, care.
Agreed. What is something that used to be important to you that you no longer care about?
Oh, definitely opinions of other musicians. Used to be. Yeah, I used to get really nervous like putting out these drum break packs. Like, all right, it's just gonna seem like it's just gonna seem to my friends like I'm not gigging as much and I need some money. And like, well, fuck that. Now look who's asking me how to mix drum break samples because the gigs have all died down. You know what I mean? So it's, yeah, I used to care about that a lot. Now it's like, my reputation precedes me now. I don't need to. You know,
no, you don't need to prove anything to anybody. You don't need to worry about that. Like they have their opinion, but you know what you're doing at the end of the day and just stay true to yourself.
Yeah man.
If you could create one law that everyone in the world had to live by, what would it be?
Honesty. And that's not just telling the truth, it's being honest with yourself. Like you walk into a room, are you that dude? Because you shouldn't need to act like it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like it's either on you or it's not, you know? Like in certain social situations, if you're weird and if you're weird, reserved, and don't know how to talk to people, don't try to talk to people. You know what I mean? If you do know how to talk to people, don't overstep and try to be Mr. fucking killing it at the party if that's not you all the time. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
Yeah, honesty.
I love that. What is the worst advice you've ever received?
Damn. Worst advice I ever received. I guess it almost counts if I didn't take the advice. But the worst advice I ever received, thankfully that I didn't take, was when I started making these drum breaks. It was sample library after sample library after sample library after sample library hitting me up saying, yo, I really like these. Would you be interested in doing this pack for us? And yeah, would my name be on it? No, our name would be on it. We would just pay you up front. Yeah. So thank God that none of those have ever happened. There's been major producers also who have hit me up and asked me to do drum breaks for them on just a work for hire basis, you know, with no publishing. Even when I tell them who my manager is, what my usual publishing is, which is very modest. Even when I tell them what my usual rates are for major label placements, they still say like, no, this would just be a work for hire thing. Thank God I did not go through with that because it's like, no, especially not with the catalog of the cat that I looked up afterwards. Like, oh no. You got placements with this person. No, we're not doing work for hire. No. Sorry.
No. It's way more fruitful and beneficial for yourself in the end to stay true to your brand and
it's a respectful thing, man. You know.
Yep.
If somebody's on the record, man, like they get publishing. I don't give a fuck.
100%.
They get publishing. I'm sorry. If somebody's on the record and they're contributing to the way it sounds in a very significant way, like if they want publishing, give them publishing.
I agree. It's true. I mean, they're contributing a piece of the record, and at the end of the day, they deserve their fair share.
Yeah. If the song's doing numbers, like nobody should be fighting over 5% publishing on a song that's going to do 15,000 streams. Like,
yep.
Relax. But yeah, major label shit, dude, pay them people, man. Give them people their publishing.
I agree. And my last question for you today is, what is the best advice you've ever received?
Ooh, best advice I ever received is from a self-made millionaire, older friend of mine. He's like one of my parents' friends who I met with a couple times. Self-made millionaire multiple times over, like went completely broke, has a construction company, went completely broke, had to fire everybody. 6 months later, came back around and said, hey, we're back up and running. Would you like to come work for me? This whole rags to riches story, right? Best advice I got from him was own it. Like, when he found out that I was doing sample packs, he knows nothing about the music industry, but he knows that I was starting to make music and put it out. He said, own it. Whatever you do, own it. And that's why, to this day, very few aspects of my drum break sample packs are not me. I'm terrible at Photoshop, so I I hire somebody to make the artwork. But it's me playing, it's me doing the mixing, it's me doing the promo, it's me making the audio melodic shit for the demos, it's me doing the website. 90% of the time, what you see of me in this industry is me. You know what I mean? Maybe I'll get a team if it ever gets to the point where I can't manage everything by myself, but it'll never not be me playing the drum breaks. It'll never not be me mixing the drum breaks. You know what I mean?
I love
that part of it. The part of it that's the most valuable was that advice that I got from my older friend is just own it, you know.
So helpful, and I'm so grateful for you for sharing that, man. That's something I'm going to take back to my own creation and music and life, and I'm sure other people are going to hear that and just realize it's like, stay true to yourself and own it, man, and it'll work out.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you for taking all your time with me today, AJ. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you for being
appreciate you so much, man.
My first drummer on the podcast to really go into the details. And I interview a lot of melodic guys, but which you do as well. But it's amazing to really talk to somebody who loves drums and contributes something very valuable to the community that not everybody does. So
appreciate that, man.
I'm excited to watch you grow. I'm excited to watch the future. I'm excited to see everything coming. I can't wait for that plugin to drop a few years from now.
Hey, man. Yeah. I got to find the right people to develop it, and I got to send the exact tape machine off to them to get that black box technology where they emulate hardware.
Yep.
It has to be that tape machine, because if not, it's just going to sound like every other tape plugin out there.
Well said, man. Well, hopefully we can reconnect in maybe a year and a half or something from now, touch base again, see where we're at. And
hell yeah.
Yeah, man, you have a great day. Enjoy your tour coming up, and I just appreciate you so much, bro. Thank you.
Appreciate you, bro. Thanks, man.